A New York appeals court today dismissed a $500 million civil fraud penalty against President Donald Trump and his companies for overvaluing their properties and financial statements. In the ruling, the judges upheld the fraud judgment, but said, quote, the $500 million to the state of New York is an excessive fine that violates the Eighth Amendment of the United States Constitution.
The case centers on allegations that Mr. Trump misled banks and insurers by inflating or deflating the value of his assets when it suited him and exaggerated his net worth by billions of dollars. New York State Attorney General Letitia James says she plans to appeal the ruling. For more on the impact of the decision, I spoke earlier with former federal prosecutor Jessica Roth, currently a professor at Cardozo School of Law. Jessica Roth, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
So this was a lengthy ruling, more than 300 pages. What were the main points of contention among the judges, and how did their differing opinions shape the outcome?
Yeah, so this was a complicated split decision. As you noted, it's over 300 pages.
Dr. John, Hear This Story has been buried long enough. A New York judge has ordered Trump to repay over $464 million, nearly $504 million, with interest within 72 hours. A crushing blow to his financial empire. The deadline and amount are devastating, hitting at the core of everything he has spent his life building. Let that number sink in for a moment. $500 million. That's not a rounding error or a negotiable sum that can be worked out over time. That's a life-altering, empire-shattering amount of money that Trump simply does not have in liquid assets. And the judge has made it crystal clear that there will be no more delays, no more emergency motions, no more legal gymnastics to avoid payment. The time for games is over. Trump has exhausted every appeal, every procedural maneuver, every stalling tactic that his army of lawyers could devise.
We have 3 opinions, and the reasoning of the judge is divided 2, 2, and 1. There was one point of commonality among all the justices, and that was that the trial court's order could not stand as it was written. But beyond there, we had disagreement among the justices. The effect of the decision of the appellate division today is to affirm the judgment, right, the verdict against Trump, his sons, their business associates, and their businesses, finding them liable under New York's civil fraud law of engaging in persistent fraud. 2 of the justices thought that actually that finding was supported by the record and was appropriate under the law. 2 other justices thought that the record was problematic and that there were errors in the conduct of the trial and would have sent the case back to the trial court for a new trial. But those 2 additional judges who thought there were problems in the trial decided to sign on to the judgment of the first 2 justices in order to get the case up to the New York Court of Appeals, the highest court of New York, for a final decision. And the effect of those 2 justices joining.
And now the bill has come due with a vengeance. If Trump cannot produce this staggering sum within 3 days, the court will begin the process of seizing and auctioning off Trump Organization properties to satisfy the judgment. Trump Tower, Mar-a-Lago, his golf courses, all of it could be taken from him and sold to the highest bidder. Think about what this means for a man whose entire identity is built on the myth of being a wildly successful businessman. Trump has spent decades cultivating an image of wealth and power, presenting himself as the ultimate deal maker, the man who could never fail, the billionaire who knows how to win. That image is the foundation of his political career, the basis of his appeal to millions of Americans who saw him as a successful outsider who could bring business acumen to Washington. But this court order exposes all of that as a carefully constructed illusion.
Essentially, in the decision of the first 2 justices is that we now have a majority effectively affirming the verdict of liability against Trump and the other defendants.
Okay, so if the appeals court upheld Trump's liability for fraud, why did it still decide to void the nearly $500 million penalty? Because in theory, fines deter wrongdoing by imposing financial consequences that outweigh the potential gains. And that was the point of imposing this $500 million fine in the first place on the Trump Organization.
So even the 2 justices who would have affirmed the finding of liability based on the record here thought that the penalty imposed by the trial court was excessive and that, in fact, it violated the U.S. and New York State Constitution's protections against excessive fines. They said that it was just vastly disproportionate to any harm caused by the defendants. So although they would affirm the finding of liability, that there was a pattern of fraud, they thought that the remedy for that, in terms of the amount of the penalty or disgorgement of profits.
The reality is that Trump is not a successful businessman in any conventional sense. He is a fraudster who systematically inflated the value of his properties to defraud banks and insurance companies, who lied about his wealth to gain financial advantages, who built his empire on deception rather than legitimate success. And now that empire is crumbling because the courts have seen through the lies and are demanding accountability. The specific details of this judgment are almost too wild to believe. Court auditors investigating Trump's finances discovered hidden Cayman Islands bank accounts that Trump never disclosed during the fraud trial. These were secret offshore accounts where Trump was apparently stashing money to avoid having it seized to pay judgments.
That or ill-gotten gains, as articulated by the trial court, that was just vastly excessive, so much so that it was unconstitutional. But notably, the justices who were prepared to affirm the finding of liability said that the other remedies imposed by the trial court that were injunctive in nature, barring the defendants from holding corporate offices, from making applications to borrow funds, for example, and also imposing an independent monitor on the businesses, that those could be affirmed. So the financial penalties, the disgorgement, they thought was excessive, but the other injunctive relief, they said, was actually appropriately tailored to address the findings of misconduct and to curb potential wrongdoing in the future.
Well, we are all certainly getting a legal education today as a result of all of this. The president crowed about this ruling in a post on his social media site, calling it a total victory. Is that how you see it?
I don't see it as a total victory for the president, because, as I said, the effect of the ruling is to affirm the finding of liability. And two of the justices were prepared to say, and did say in their opinion.
But the auditors found them anyway. And when they looked at the balances, they discovered that the accounts had been drained to just $27 million. $27 million in hidden offshore accounts for a man who claims to be a billionaire. Where is the rest of the money? Has Trump already spent it? Has he moved it to other hidden accounts that haven't been discovered yet? Or has the Trump financial empire always been more smoke and mirrors than actual wealth? Whatever the explanation, the bottom line is devastating for Trump. His accessible cash has been frozen and seized by court order. His bank accounts in the United States are now at zero. His offshore accounts only contain $27 million, and he owes $504 million. The math simply doesn't work. Trump's reaction to this ruling has been nothing short of unhinged.
They thought that the factual record strongly supported the finding of persistent fraud by the president, his sons, his associates, and his business entities. So I don't think it is a total victory for the president. He's still going to have to go to the New York Court of Appeals to get that finding of liability overturned, if that is the eventual outcome in this case. So not a total victory for the president, but that said, I would say it's a significant loss for the Attorney General.
And as we mentioned, the Attorney General, Letitia James, says she will appeal the ruling. At the same time, President Trump's Justice Department has launched multiple investigations into her, part of a broader pattern of retribution against his perceived political enemies. What are the implications of that dynamic, and how might it affect the likelihood of her appeal succeeding?
It's very hard to say how all of those factors will weigh into the Court of Appeals deliberations on this appeal. I mean, they're going to be looking at the record here of what happened below and should not be taking into account sort of the political machinations on either side, sort of outside of what transpired in the courtroom.
According to multiple reports from inside the White House, there was absolute panic in the Oval Office when Trump received the news. He was reportedly screaming at his lawyers, demanding they find some way, any way, to stop the payment. He was calling the judge corrupt, claiming the entire legal system is rigged against him. He was raging that this is all a witch hunt designed to destroy him politically and financially. And then Trump did what he always does when he's cornered and terrified. He went on social media and posted 23 times in a single day about this ruling. 23 posts, each one more desperate and unhinged than the last. He claimed they're bankrupting America by bankrupting him, as if his personal financial problems have anything to do with the American economy. He called the judgment total financial assassination, as if being held accountable for fraud is somehow an attack rather than justice. He attacked the judge, the prosecutors, the entire New York legal system, anyone who had anything to do with holding him accountable. But here's the thing that Trump can't seem to accept. He committed fraud. He inflated the value of his properties to get better loans and better insurance rates. He lied to banks and insurers systematically over many years. A jury found him liable. A judge ordered him to pay. This isn't persecution. This is accountability. Trump broke the law, and now he's facing the consequences of his actions. But Trump has spent his entire life believing that he should be above the law, that his wealth and power should protect him from ever having to face consequences. He thought being president would make him untouchable. He thought the power of the office would shield him from financial accountability. But the courts are proving Trump wrong in the most painful way possible. Trump is not above the law. Trump is going to pay for his crimes, whether he likes it or not. And the payment is going to cost him everything he has built. The timing of this payment deadline is absolutely brutal for Trump. The judge issued the order on a Friday, giving Trump less than 3 full days to come up with $504 million. That's an impossible timeline for anyone, even someone with legitimate billions in liquid assets. But for Trump, whose wealth is almost entirely tied up in real estate and other illiquid assets, it's a death sentence. He can't sell properties fast enough to raise that kind of cash in 3 days. He can't get a loan because what bank is going to lend $500 million to someone facing impeachment, multiple criminal investigations, and the very real possibility of financial collapse? No bank wants that risk. Trump is trapped in a financial corner with no way out, and the court knows it. The judge issued this order specifically to force the seizure and auction of Trump's properties. It's designed to be impossible to satisfy, to demonstrate that Trump's financial claims have always been exaggerated, to expose the truth about his wealth or lack thereof. And this connects directly to everything else that's collapsing around Trump right now. This financial judgment is happening simultaneously with his impeachment proceedings. It's happening as Republican senators are breaking ranks and voting against him. It's happening as his military operation in Venezuela is falling apart. It's happening as the IRS is prosecuting him for tax evasion. It's happening as the Supreme Court has ruled that his immunity doesn't protect him from impeachment. Everything is crumbling at once. The walls are closing in from every direction, and this financial judgment might be the thing that finally breaks him completely. Because without money, Trump can't fight back. Without money, he can't defend himself in court. Without money, he can't run his political operation. Without money, he's powerless. And Trump is watching his money disappear in real time, knowing that there's nothing he can do to stop it. The New York fraud case that has led to this moment has been years in the making. And understanding the full scope of what Trump did is essential to grasping why this judgment is so devastating. New York Attorney General Letitia James brought the case after a lengthy investigation revealed that Trump had been systematically inflating the value of his properties for years. This wasn't a minor error or an accounting oversight. This was a deliberate pattern of deception designed to defraud banks and insurance companies. Trump would claim that Mar-a-Lago was worth hundreds of millions of dollars when applying for loans, getting better terms based on that inflated value. But then Trump would claim the same property was worth much less for tax purposes, reducing his tax liability. That's textbook fraud. You can't tell a bank your property is worth one amount to get a loan, and then tell the IRS it's worth a different amount to pay less taxes. That's illegal. And the evidence that Trump did exactly that was overwhelming. Financial documents showed Trump grossly inflating property values across his entire portfolio. Expert testimony proved the valuations were false and that Trump knew they were false. The judge found Trump liable for fraud and ordered him to pay $464 million as a penalty, the estimated amount of benefit Trump gained from his fraudulent conduct over the years. And then there's the interest, which has been accumulating and now brings the total to over $504 million. That's not a penalty that Trump can negotiate down or appeal away. That's a final judgment from a court that has thoroughly examined the evidence and found Trump guilty of massive, systematic fraud. The case was so strong, the evidence so clear, that Trump's lawyers never had a real chance of winning on the merits. Trump immediately started fighting the judgment using every legal tactic available. He filed appeals claiming the penalty was too high. He argued that no one was actually harmed by his fraud because the banks got repaid. He claimed the judge was biased against him. He tried everything to delay payment and avoid accountability. And for a while, some of these tactics worked. The appeals process slowed things down. Trump got stays that allowed him to avoid immediate payment while his appeals were pending. Trump's lawyers were able to generate enough legal noise to create the appearance that the judgment might be overturned or reduced. But eventually the appeals failed. Appellate courts upheld the fraud finding and the penalty. Courts rejected Trump's arguments that the penalty was excessive. And now Judge Arthur Engoron has run out of patience entirely. The judge issued an order rejecting all of Trump's final delay tactics, calling Trump's emergency stay appeal baseless and declaring that Trump has no more legal grounds to avoid payment. The discovery of Trump's hidden Cayman Islands accounts added another layer of damage to Trump's credibility. Court auditors were investigating Trump's finances to figure out how much money he actually has and where it might be hidden. And they found secret offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands that Trump had never disclosed. Trump was hiding money overseas to avoid having it seized to pay the judgment. But the auditors found the accounts anyway, and when they looked at how much money was in them, they found only $27 million. That's a suspiciously low number for someone who claims to be a billionaire. Where's the rest of the money? There are several possibilities. Maybe Trump already spent it on legal fees, political activities, and the lavish lifestyle he maintains. Maybe Trump moved it to other hidden accounts that haven't been discovered yet. Maybe Trump never had as much money as he claimed, and the $27 million represents most of his actual liquid wealth. Whatever the explanation, the bottom line is devastating for Trump. He doesn't have $504 million in accessible cash, and the money he does have is being seized. The frozen and drained bank accounts represent another crushing blow. Trump had various bank accounts in the United States that contained cash and other liquid assets. Those accounts have all been frozen by court order, and the money in those accounts has been seized to partially satisfy the fraud judgment. Trump's U.S. bank accounts now have $0 in them. He cannot access any of that money. It's all been taken to pay his debts. And even after seizing all of Trump's domestic bank accounts and his Cayman Islands accounts, there's still not enough money to cover the $504 million judgment. Trump is short by hundreds of millions of dollars. And the only way to make up that shortfall is to liquidate his real estate holdings. Trump is going to have to sell Trump Tower, Mar-a-Lago, multiple golf courses, and other properties. The court is going to seize those properties and auction them off to the highest bidder. And Trump is going to watch his empire being dismantled piece by piece to pay for his crimes. The 72-hour deadline is impossibly short, and it's designed to be that way. Judge Engoron knows Trump can't raise $504 million in 3 days. The judge issued this order specifically to force asset seizures and auctions. The court has already identified Trump Organization properties that will be seized if Trump doesn't pay. Trump Tower in Manhattan is almost certainly on the list. That's Trump's signature property, the building with his name on it in giant gold letters, the symbol of his business empire. But it's going to be seized and auctioned if Trump can't come up with the cash. Mar-a-Lago is probably on the list too. That's Trump's resort in Florida, where he lives when he's not in the White House. The property that has become synonymous with his brand. but the court can seize it and sell it to satisfy the judgment. Multiple Trump golf courses are likely targets for seizure as well. All of these properties are going to be taken from Trump and sold, and Trump is going to watch it happen because he doesn't have the cash to stop it. This is Trump's empire being destroyed in real time. Everything Trump built over his entire career is being liquidated to pay for his fraud, and it's happening right now during his presidency while everything else is also collapsing. Trump's legal troubles are multiplying. His political support is eroding. His financial foundation is crumbling. And Trump has no coherent strategy to deal with any of it. His only response is to attack anyone who holds him accountable and claim he's being persecuted. But that's not working anymore. People see through it. Courts are enforcing judgments. Donors are abandoning him. Republicans are breaking ranks. And impeachment is accelerating. The walls are closing in from every direction, and Trump is running out of places to hide. The connection to the impeachment proceedings is particularly significant. House Democrats have already filed articles of impeachment that include financial corruption charges. One of the articles deals specifically with Trump's abuse of power for personal financial benefit. The New York fraud judgment is perfect evidence for that article. Trump committed massive fraud before becoming president, and now Trump is using his presidential power to try to avoid paying the judgment. Trump is claiming presidential immunity. Trump is attacking judges and prosecutors. Trump is trying to interfere with the enforcement of the judgment. All of that is abuse of power. All of that is using the presidency for personal benefit. And that's exactly what the financial corruption article in the impeachment resolution is about. Democrats are going to use this court order and Trump's reaction to it as evidence in impeachment proceedings. They're going to show that Trump is a fraudster who's trying to use presidential power to escape accountability, and that's going to strengthen the impeachment case significantly. The political fallout from this financial disaster is going to be enormous, and Republicans are watching it happen with growing alarm. GOP donors are looking at Trump being ordered to pay $500 million and thinking, this guy is broke. Why would we give money to someone who can't even pay his own debts? Republican mega-donors are starting to distance themselves from Trump. They're not returning his calls. They're not writing checks. They're not hosting fundraisers because Trump has become toxic. Nobody wants to be associated with someone who's facing financial ruin, impeachment, and criminal investigations all at once. And without donor support, Trump's political operation collapses. Trump needs money to run ads. He needs money to pay lawyers. He needs money to fund his political activities. But if donors abandon him, Trump is broke both personally and politically. And that makes Trump vulnerable in ways he's never been before. Trump can't fight back without money. He can't defend himself without money. His entire operation requires constant cash infusions. And those cash infusions are drying up as donors realize Trump is a sinking ship they don't want to be on. The financial judgment is accelerating the donor exodus because it proves what many donors have long suspected, that Trump's wealth is more illusion than reality. Trump isn't a successful businessman who happens to be facing legal trouble. Trump is a fraudster whose empire is being dismantled by the courts. Donors don't want to be associated with that. They don't want their names linked to someone whose properties are being seized and auctioned. They don't want to explain to their friends and business partners why they gave money to a man who's functionally bankrupt. So they're pulling back, and Trump is feeling the financial pressure from all sides. This destroys Trump's image as a successful businessman, and that's devastating for Trump politically. Trump's entire brand is built on the idea that he's a real estate mogul and deal maker. Trump claims he's rich because he's smart. Trump says his business success qualifies him to be president. But this court order exposes all of that as a lie. Trump isn't a successful businessman. Trump is a fraudster who inflated property values to trick banks and insurers. And now Trump is so broke that he can't even pay the judgment against him without liquidating his empire. Trump's bank accounts are at zero. His offshore accounts only have 27 million. He owes 504 million. The math doesn't work. Trump is functionally bankrupt, and everyone can see it now. The myth of Trump, the billionaire businessman, is shattered. Trump is just a con artist who's finally being held accountable. And that destroys Trump's credibility on everything. If Trump lied about his business success, what else has Trump lied about? Voters are going to look at this situation and realize they've been conned. And that's devastating for Trump politically. His entire appeal rests on the idea that he's a successful outsider who knows how to get things done. But if he's actually a failed businessman who committed fraud and is now facing financial ruin, that appeal evaporates. Voters don't want to elect a failure. They don't want to support someone whose empire is being dismantled by the courts. They want winners, not losers. And Trump is looking like the biggest loser in America right now. The forced liquidation of Trump's properties is going to be a public humiliation that Trump cannot escape. Trump Tower being seized and auctioned is going to be front-page news. Mar-a-Lago being taken from Trump is going to dominate headlines. Golf courses with Trump's name being sold off is going to be covered extensively by media. Trump is going to watch his empire being dismantled in public. Everyone is going to see it. Everyone is going to know that Trump is broke. Everyone is going to understand that Trump's businessman image was a fraud. And Trump cannot spin his way out of this. You can't claim you're a successful billionaire when the court is literally auctioning off your properties because you can't pay your debts. Trump's entire self-image is built on being rich and successful. But that image is being destroyed right now, and the humiliation is going to be intense. Trump cares more about his image than almost anything else, and watching his properties get seized and sold is going to devastate him psychologically. This is Trump's worst nightmare coming true. Trump's legal team is scrambling to find some way to stop the seizure, but they're running out of options. They could try to file for bankruptcy, but that would be an admission of financial failure that Trump would never accept. They could try to negotiate a payment plan with the court, but the judges made it clear that there will be no more delays. They could try to find some wealthy benefactor willing to lend Trump the money, but who would take that risk? Trump is toxic. His finances are a mess. His political future is uncertain. No one with $500 million to lend is going to give it to someone in Trump's position. So Trump is trapped. He has no way to pay the judgment. He has no way to stop the seizure. He has no way to save his empire, and he's going to have to watch it all disappear. The connection to HRES 353, the impeachment resolution, is significant. One of the articles of impeachment deals with financial corruption. Democrats are arguing that Trump has used his office to enrich himself and protect himself from accountability for his financial crimes. The New York fraud judgment is perfect evidence for that article. Trump committed massive fraud before becoming president, and now Trump is using his presidential power to try to avoid paying the judgment. Trump is claiming presidential immunity. Trump is attacking judges and prosecutors. Trump is trying to interfere with the enforcement of the judgment. All of that is abuse of power. All of that is using the presidency for personal benefit. And that's exactly what the financial corruption article in HRES 353 is about. Democrats are going to use this court order and Trump's reaction to it as evidence in impeachment proceedings. They're going to show that Trump is a fraudster who's trying to use presidential power to escape accountability. And that's going to strengthen the impeachment case significantly. The Republican Party is in crisis. They have a president who's facing financial ruin, impeachment, and criminal investigations. Their donors are abandoning them. Their base is divided. Their leadership is weak. And they have no idea how to handle any of it. Some Republicans are realizing that Trump is a sinking ship, and they're starting to distance themselves from him. They're refusing to defend his conduct. Some are privately saying they'll support impeachment to cut Trump loose before he drags the entire party down. But other Republicans are sticking with Trump, believing that their political survival depends on loyalty to him. The party is split, and that split is going to become more pronounced as Trump's financial collapse accelerates and his impeachment moves forward. The impeachment vote is coming soon, probably within the next few weeks. House Democrats have overwhelming evidence of Trump's crimes: obstruction of justice, abuse of power, tax evasion, and now financial fraud and corruption. They have court rulings supporting their case. They have documents proving Trump's guilt. They have witnesses ready to testify. The case for impeachment is ironclad. And Trump's forced liquidation of properties just adds to that case. Democrats are going to argue that this is not someone who should be president. Trump committed massive fraud. Trump is financially ruined. Trump is using his office to try to avoid accountability. Trump needs to be removed. And that argument is going to resonate. Even some moderate Republicans are going to look at all the evidence and realize they can't defend Trump anymore. The House is going to vote to impeach, and then the Senate is going to hold a trial. And Trump is probably going to be convicted and removed because enough Republican senators are going to realize that their political survival depends on cutting Trump loose. Trump faces financial ruin, political collapse, and probable impeachment as a $504 million judgment and a crushing 72-hour deadline dismantle his empire. The law has caught up, and he has nowhere left to run.